Hey everyone, Chad here with Keller Williams. I wanted to do a video on some best practices and some features of ZipForms. We use it often, as well as creating new listings and writing contracts, purchase offers in it. So this tutorial, this video is going to be geared primarily towards newer agents. So if you're a newer agent, especially with Keller Williams, I'm going to give you some best practices, some procedures, maybe some tips and tricks, and let's get started. So I'm going to shrink this video or the screen down if you don't mind. You don't want to see my big face on here. We're looking at my transaction screen. So this is, you're logged in, assuming to ZipForms. If you're a brand new agent, make sure that you log in. You're going to get a free ZipForms through the board. Using ours, it's free as well, but you're going to want to make sure that you're linked up to Keller Williams. And I'm going to show you in a second how to ensure that that is in fact the case. I apologize. I have the entire firm's transactions, and therefore it shows up on here. It takes a little bit longer. So when you go into forms, this is how you're going to know if you're in the right ZipForms or not, is you'll see the library, Keller Williams Honolulu. If you see these other ones or one or two of them, but you don't see Keller Williams, then you are not hooked up to our ZipForms. So make sure that you do. And if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to the Market Center Tech Trainer, and they will get you all set up as well. But let's go through real quick and see what features we have here. So this is your dashboard. If you click on your dashboard, you're going to see all these different kind of graphs and tools and what have you. And it's helpful. I would say don't even focus on it. Don't use it. The reason is because we have at Keller Williams Command. And Command is all inclusive for your CRM system. You can manage and track transactions through something called opportunities. You can watch and control your goals and where you're at in your goals. So these kind of things here are not something that we use. It's not entirely accurate anyways. So don't use it. You don't need to worry about it. I would stick to other features in here. So let's say, for instance, we're going to go in transactions. Let's click on a new transaction. This is all the transactions that you'll write in here will show up here. You can categorize them. I tend to do that. I tend to put things in pending or closed or inactive or what have you. That just helps to sort through. Active is everything that's active, in my case for the firm. But I would organize it a little bit. And when you drop down, you can see it in this format. You can also see it if you wanted to in this format. Whatever is easiest for you. I like to use this one. It makes it a little bit easier for me to see. Also, what I would say is these are things that you're naming and who owns the file and so forth. I would absolutely, if I were you, make sure that when you're writing new files that you have a specific, theme to it. Like I tend to put seller and then the name of the client and then the address. Whatever it is that you want to do is totally up to you. You're in full control over that, but make sure it's consistent and the same throughout. If it's not, that's going to be hard to search for things. I've gone into other people's files to help them with things. And if it's disorganized, it's really difficult to find anything. Like it's really, really tough to even see it and make sense of everything. So make sure it's organized, especially as you're brand new and you're getting started. So when you click on new, obviously it's going to ask you for a couple of things that make perfect sense, which is it a new listing? Is it a new purchase offer? Let's say, for instance, in this case that we're going to use a new purchase offer. So you agents, brand new, you're writing an offer. What do? Where do you even start? Well, obviously you've already shown the property, hopefully, to the client. That's obviously step number one. Make sure they're pre-approved. Make sure they want the property. They've given you instructions to write the offer. So what you should have before anything moving forward is you should have already selected the property, shown the property, have a pre-approval. They've given you instructions to write that offer, and now you're given that task. So what's the next step? You're going to click on new, and for this sake, I'm just going to call it a test. And then you're going to select what it is. So I'm going to jump over to this screen real quick, which hopefully you'll see this as well. I'm going to move my face out of the way there. So I'm looking at the matrix. You guys all have access to this. It's the MLS. So we are going to select a property. Doesn't even matter what property it is. Let's just see what pops up. Great. I just reduced it down to 15 matches, which is great. So let's say this is the property that we're looking at. This is the one that we've been given instruction to write an offer on. What a nice property. So clearly it's a condo. This is the one we're going to make an offer on. I'm just going to take the MLS number here for a second. The reason why is because when I jump into here, I'm going to write a new offer, as I'd mentioned before. We're going to call it test. I'm going to say it's a condominium, which it is. And I'm going to jump over here. This is going to be super helpful. I notice a lot of new agents don't know about this or ignore it or don't know what it is. This is going to save you a lot of time and hassle. So click on MLS Connect. You're going to drop in that MLS number that I copied from the previous matrix page. I love it when I include the property photo too. So click include and hit find. What it'll do is it'll grab all that information from the MLS and it's going to transfer a lot of things so you don't have to type it from scratch. And as you know, when we're dealing with so many meticulous data, MLS numbers and TMK and price and so on and so forth, there's a lot of room for error and a lot of room for data entry issues too. So while the MLS is not perfect, at least you can get started with some sort of foundational piece of information. So use listing. And then to make your life even easier, could you imagine? I actually put together templates for you. So these templates are for listings. It's for buyers as well. In this case, let's just say that this one is a buyer for conventional. If I hit save, it's going to start creating and packing together using that MLS that I found, which is this one right here. And it's going to put it all together into this nice little packet. And you can tell that by if you click on documents, the purchase contract is already there. Our KW standard addendum is already there. And as is condition addendum is already there. A co-op is already there. And a lead-based paint disclosure is already there. Now, with that being said, I don't know yet if, because this is a template, so the template automatically populated that lead-based paint disclosure. I don't know if it requires it or not. We got to take a look. And so in this case, the year built is 1965. So perfect. It does apply to the lead-based paint. It's applicable. We're going to leave it alone. But if, let's say, the property we're brand new was built in maybe just a few years ago, we can just simply check on that and then hit delete. And then we can remove it altogether. In this case, we're going to keep it. So here's how you're going to start populating and writing the contract. If you notice here, this little gray bar, there's little tabs here. Start with summary. If you've noticed, it populated for your benefit and convenience some of the information. It has MLS number already in there. The unit number is already in there. You want to scan through and make sure everything's correct, but it put it in there. Some of the things that are kind of a hassle that drops in is the TMK here, year built, the zoning, and so forth. You don't need to put this in here. You can drop that in directly to the contract itself. That part's up to you. Commissions, again, we don't use this to track. We use command to track all that data, which is far more accurate. So I wouldn't even get hung up on that either. But it's really mainly just this top section here. Then when you go to parties, this one's important. So what it does do is it automatically puts in the listing agent. So let's go back to the listing agent. This is who it is. Right? So it populated some of that information. Let's open it up and take a look and see if there's anything missing. So the agent number is there. The license number is not. And we do need that information in there. So to make it easier for yourself, what I would typically recommend you do is go over here. This is the office's license number, and this is this agent's license number. So let's go ahead and copy this agent's license number here. So that's there. And then let's copy the firm's license number, which is right here. We'll copy that in right there. And so we're good to go. And what this does is on the purchase contract in the necessary space where it asks who the listing agent is, their license number, their firm's license number, it is now already there. So you don't have to think about it. It's less room for error. So on the party side, this is on the sell side, right? That's who that is. Now we can switch to the buy side specifically. There's nothing in there yet because we don't have that information. So we know we're going to sell our property. Let's say Mr. John Smith. That's all the information you need. You don't need to put the email address in. In the past, it was helpful to have it in there specifically because when you're using I think it's called DigiSign, which is the digital signing software that's built into ZipForms, but we don't need it because with Keller Williams, you get DocuSign, which is far more user-friendly and robust. You get it for free. So you don't need to complete anything else in here except for just that. And the reason why that's important is to ensure that it shows up like that. And I should probably change my format here to this as opposed to all caps. And I hit save, and that's what's going to show up on the purchase contract as buyer number one, or that first position buyer. Let's say John Smith, Mr. Smith, is married, and John is married to Sally Smith. We'll put Sally's name in here as well, and we're going to hit save. So now we have John and Sally Smith. Selling agent automatically is going to default to, it should be you. That's on there, and I'll tell you this. This is a little bit of a trick. Is some people think the selling agent is a listing agent. That is not the case. So selling agent is you. It's the buyer's agent. It's who's selling the property, and who's selling the property or bringing the offer or helping with the sale of that transaction is the buyer's agent. So buyer's agent and selling agent is synonymous. So we can put my name in there. You would put my ID in here. You can put my license number in here. In this case, obviously, it would be yours. The firm's information, we'll put that in there. So we'll hit save. So we got the sell side. We got the buy side. We got the service provider. This is defaulted. This is one of our partners, First Hawaii Title. If you don't have a relationship with a title company or escrow company, consider using them. They're great. Otherwise, you can just fill this in with whomever you want. So if it's not First Hawaii Title and you'd rather have another title company, just put that in there and hit save, and you are good to go. So now we have, again, going back, we have the summary, we have the parties, and if you notice, it's selected to all, so you can see everyone. You can see scanning up that it has the buyer, it has the listing agent, it has you, and it has the escrow company. What is missing? What's missing right now is a seller. We don't have a seller information. So where do we get that from? We go into the MLS. And a couple places that you can click is you can click on this little tab that says tax. You can also click on the TMK. One opens up a window, one just kind of moves that tab over. So I'm going to click on this for sake of ease. And here is who the seller is. So we'll take this, I'm copying it, and I'm going to paste it there. I'm going to jump back to this screen. I like to copy it and paste it rather than retype it, just to ensure that I have no spelling errors. Then we're going to hit save. So now we got the seller, we got the listing agent. Double check that there's no second party. If there was, it would say and something, or it could say a trust, or it could say something to that effect. So we have all that information in there now. We can go back to this tab to ensure we can refer back to it. And so now that we're on summary, we finished that. Parties, all that information is there. Documents. I've mentioned to you before, for your convenience, we've added in all the documents that are required. And we've also pre-completed it. I would say about 55 to 65% of the information's in there. Some of the things I don't know what it is because it's specific to each property. And this is not so that it makes it easier for you to write a contract. You really do have to master and understand how to write a contract, what everything means. It's just, it saves some time, and it reverts back to the Keller Williams minimum standards. So with that said, let's get started. I'll start on purchase contract. You're going to put who your BIC is, and that could be, obviously you should know who your BIC is. It would be, if you're in coaching, it'll probably be your coach. If you're not in coaching, it will probably be one of the BICs, or myself, for instance. So that's that. Now, in this particular case, it's not a dual agency because we are not this firm here. Pretty easy. What we're going to do is go through this drop-down menu, and the thing on the very top there, it's this little dotted line. There's going to be a ton of properties that you've written contracts for before, but beneath it, typically above this line, it'll default to who that listing firm is based upon the parties on that other tab. So see, by importing some of that stuff, it makes it so much easier for you. You're going to make a check mark here. I've defaulted this because all the firms that are on here are going to be part of NAR. And then this would be us, right? Because we're writing the contract representing the buyer. So our drop down here should be Keller Williams Honolulu. Is not a dual agency. So I'm going to NA that, and I'm going to NA this just so there's no confusion. Don't leave, as much as possible, don't leave blank areas on the contract because it could be filled in. It could be, that could cause some confusion. We could have some nefarious folks try to enter information into that space. So we want to have a checkbox or an NA as much as possible. I've defaulted B1 here, checking that in 3 days because that gives the buyer the best opportunity. If you need to change it, that's fine. This one here is that you as a buyer's agent have received a check and like you're in physical possession of it. Don't get in the habit of that if at all possible. In some cases, you have to, but if you're holding checks, you're now liable for the check and where it goes and all that kind of stuff. So I would absolutely recommend wiring it or have the buyer directly deposit it into escrow. So one of these two things would be appropriate. If you do check this one, though, it gives you a little bit more time, right? 3 days versus the next business day. So bear that in mind, but it's defaulted for you already. C1 is we're going to put in the expiration date. This is going to be the expiration of the contract itself. So I'm writing it on October 21st. It's appropriate to give them 24 to 48 hours. A lot of other things in play, though, because if they have an open house coming up, maybe you want them to give you an answer prior to the open house. Depends on a circumstance. Talk to your coach, talk to your broker for some strategy. In this case, for example purposes, I'm going to just put in here. I know it says PM here and I put it here. I'm trying to be ultra clear. In addition, by default, because this contract is a Hawaii contract, in some of the context in the latter portions of I think it's page 13 or 14, it specifies that the contract is to assume that it's Hawaii Standard Time. I put it in there anyways. And the reason why is we're kind of a transient state, a transient market, whereby there are a lot of people that live outside of Hawaii, a lot of military, a lot of people relocating for their jobs or retiring here or whatever the case is. They may not physically be on island. So again, if you can eliminate any confusion, you're writing a better contract. So this is just to ensure that a seller that's receiving it, if they're not physically here, they understand that they got to respond by this time, which is Hawaii time, not the time of the time zone that they're currently in. Don't assume that they know that. So moving on, this is blank, obviously, because you got to fill this in yourself. I've put in the default in a template 2 days after business J1 satisfaction. And, being that it's a conventional template, the language for that is already built in. You can fill all those kind of things out. You're going to fill this out, check all the ones that apply. We already know that the as-is addendums that is in there. We know that we need lead-based paint. That's in there. And assuming that there's nothing else, you need to, per right here, fill in all blanks. Write NA if not applicable. I see this often where agents just go, that's good, I'm just going to leave it blank. That's not. So make sure you fill it in, so on and so forth. I'm not going to spend the time doing all that. But here's a good thing is all the data transferred over too. Here's your TMK. You didn't have to write it in yourself. It's already there. It moved over the address right here too, which is great. Same thing here, inclusions. Let's check that. And then where are you going to get this information from? I'm going to go back here to the purchase contract. I'm sorry, the MLS, and inclusions are right here. So I'm going to put in every single thing that I see on here. AC split, cable TV. And what I typically do is I focus on the ones that are there first. AC split, cable TV. I go back, drapes, kitchenware. So some of these things I know aren't there. I'll put drapes, kitchenware, microwave hood, range oven, and so forth. So you're going to go through and you're going to check the ones that are applicable. Notice this is microwave. I put microwave hood specifically. And then when assuming you've put everything in here, then you're going to go back. You're going to put all the NAs. Same thing, write NA if not applicable. Okay, then you're going to move on, continue forward, and I've already pre-completed some of this for you too. So F2 already has 45 days from acceptance, delivered vacant, which is the language that we'd like to see. The only time that this does not apply, delivered vacant, is if it's a condotel or if it's a tenant-occupied property, because they may want to have it purchased with a tenant in it. That might be some income, or it's obviously if it's a contract that they're in, a tenant contract, it conveys with the property as well. F3A, it's defaulted at 10 days. You can obviously change this. This you're going to go in and check it as NA because it's not applicable if this one is. You can absolutely reverse it. So in other words, we're not saying you have to have this, but what we are saying is that you got to make sure that you're checking one or the other. Here's a good thing, and I'm glad this came up, is so I didn't finish typing it. And if I exited out of that little space on F2, remember where I kind of highlighted a couple of things. If you notice, it defaulted to some weird format, which is a date. So this is today's date kind of in a funky format. Make sure that you see that, because that is not obviously accurate. That's not what you want. So you want to exit out of there, select it all, and then put whatever you intend on there. This is the escrow company. You absolutely are going to, I just put 123 escrow, that there's no such thing, but just as an example, when you put the escrow company, especially if it's a brand name or a franchise escrow company, make sure that you complete it with the branch office and the escrow officer. Address and phone number will be helpful. That's not a must, but the name is a must. Branch office is a must. Escrow officer is an absolute must. All this other stuff is pre-completed for you. Make sure you check this one if it's applicable, if it's a primary residence. If it's not, then you're going to check this one here, whatever is applicable there. This is already completed for you. Make sure that you fill this out. A lot of people kind of rush through this and don't check yes, or the X rather, or NA. Make sure you do that. This is not a purchase contract class. You can watch another video for that. But you can go through all this. See, all this is already completed for you. I've made it so easy. This is a condo. This is not, in this particular case, not a single family. So you don't need a survey for a condo. So this is one of those that you can just NA. There, and it takes this 21 out. This doesn't matter. This, you notice there's no X here. So leave that alone. Not a big deal. And then there you go. And so we're assuming that we put all this stuff in, and assuming everything is right and accurate, we hit save, we hit back, and now we finish this. So what we want to do is jump into the other ones. And that's the hardest one, by the way, is a purchase contract. That's the kind of the meat of everything. This one, you just want to make sure that the names are correct. Your client's name, the both buyers, and then the seller. And there's nothing else for you to do on here, but I would always check each one. Special terms, I'd put NA. There aren't any special terms. If there were, talk to your broker, talk to your coach about what you should put in there. Don't make things up on the fly. Here's the co-op. So this one's super important. You notice that the commissions are blank. Let's go see what the commissions are. This is 2.5% with no GE. So here's the proper way to write that out. That's how you should write that out. What you shouldn't do is this. 2.5 what? $2.5. 2.5%. There's no percent sign. And even if you had a percent sign, that's not enough. 2.5% of what? The purchase price, the offer, the appraised value, the final sales price. We have to be very specific. I mean, we're in the business of contracts, so let's make sure that that it's accurate. You put the today's date in there, and this is good to go. Obviously, if I put my brokerage information, it would appear here, which I didn't fill that out, but it would already be in there. And then this part is correct. So seller number 1, this is blank because there's no seller number 2. And that is it. So what do you do after this is you are going to check all these things here. And then you're going to download as a PDF. You can choose to have it a single or separate PDFs. And that just simply means that this is going to be one PDF document, or it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I'm your broker and I review, I prefer it in separate PDFs. If you do it in separate PDFs, I'm able on my phone or my tablet or my computer just to scroll side to side through all the different documents. If it's one, and then I'm referencing, like I'm looking at one versus the other and so forth. The other thing I forgot to add, which is super important, is we got to add the MLS document. Your broker needs to see the MLS. They need to see what they're reviewing for. So what you're going to do here is just simply download this as a, see, I can print as a PDF, and I'm going to save it into that file. So when you save it into that file, it'll just download it. I'm going to download it right to my desktop. And when I go over here, I would just simply add that to the document. So when it says add document, I can browse for document and then I can add it right in there. And then it'll show up right here on the very top. And then when I go to check all these different things to download it, I would also check that MLS PDF and hit save as PDF, click to my device or save to my device, save separate PDFs, and then download it and then send it off to your broker for review. And that is it. So please try to use, I hope that's helpful, but please try to use this the right way. And if you need other documents, so the one thing I want to touch on too, is if you need extra documents. So I've already kind of preloaded this for you to make it easy, but other forms are right here. So if you click on this, this other menu pops up and you can add things to it. So if you're in the middle of escrow, so you've already written the contract, you're in escrow, you have your offer accepted, and you're going through J1, which is a home inspection, you can add that there. You're giving a commission credit, talk to your broker first, you can add that there. All these forms are accessible here. If you need the full form library, you can click that. Maybe you have an amendment or an addendum. Again, ask your broker which document is acceptable for your circumstance. But all these things can be found here. Let's say that you're in the purchase contract and you're putting a clause in. What a clause would be used for, this is in section Q, would be used for certain circumstances that are unique to this transaction. So what would be a scenario or an example? Would be like an appraisal clause. So where do you get that information? Don't write it on your own. Instead, go right there. We've written it for you. Here's a thing called Clause Manager. So in your case, you're going to go to something called Global Clauses, and I'm going to have an appraisal clause. So this here, neutral or buyer, that simply means who's has the advantage in that circumstance. So this is an appraisal clause that benefits really the seller. So it's already written for you. I'm going to go ahead and select all. I'll close. And here it says, please number Q1. So I'm going to put Q1. I've pasted that in there. So you would fill in the blanks appropriate to whatever your offer is, but that would be an example of where to find the clause and how to use that. But let's say I wanted to add another clause too. That would be Q2. And I would go back to Clause Manager and say, what would be that clause that's appropriate? Maybe there's an existing, this is a condo, so maybe it doesn't apply, but maybe it's the association documents. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste that right in there. So that's how that should look. And if you exceed this space here, ZipForms is smart enough to know that it's going to draft another form to add the remaining documents onto it. So you don't need to try to force fit it in there. But if you have more things that fit on here, you'll probably have too many clauses too. So just know that the more clauses, you could potentially harm your transaction too. But speak with your coach, speak with your broker on direction, on strategy, on some of that stuff. But that's it. So I hope that's helpful. And if you have questions, you're always welcome to contact me. You can reach me directly on my email. chadshima@kw.com is the best way to reach me. And I appreciate you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Good luck.